I used to believe the world ended quietly, slowly, like a light dimming out. But that day, the day Ethan Carter destroyed my life, it didn't fade. It exploded. Everything in my life before that moment feels like a blurred photograph now. Soft, warm, too innocent. I was 24. I thought I had love. I thought I had a future. And I thought Ethan, with his charming smile and expensive watch and promises sweeter than honey, would be the man I grew old with. Everyone in our small town knew his name. His family was powerful. His father had served in the mayor's office. His mother owned 3 boutiques. Ethan grew up believing the world owed him a place in its center. And I, Maya Brooks, was the girl who believed every word he whispered. It was a chilly October morning when my life split into before and after. I remember the air smelled like burnt leaves. I was standing in Ethan's apartment, wearing the blue sweater he said he loved, holding 2 coffee cups, his and mine. He was not supposed to be home, but he was, and he wasn't alone. When I opened the door, I saw him standing there, shirtless, and Taylor Scott, yes, the Taylor Scott, the girl who had everything handed to her, was in his bed, wrapped in the sheets I used to wash by hand. Ethan froze first. Taylor didn't. She smirked. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, as if I had betrayed him. I felt the first crack inside my chest. I brought you breakfast. I was supposed to talk about the engagement dinner with my family tonight." Taylor laughed, low and careless. "Engagement? Ethan never told me he was getting married." My fingers tightened around the coffee cups. The heat burned my palms, but not as painfully as his next words. "Maya," he said, rubbing his face like I was the problem, "I'm not marrying you. I never planned to. You misunderstood everything." Misunderstood? That word sliced me open. For 2 years, he took everything from me. My time, my loyalty, my youth. I fought my family for him. I lost friends because of him. And he stood there, emotionless, as he shattered the life I'd built around him. "You said you loved me," I whispered. He shrugged. "You loved me. That was enough." Enough for him, never enough for me. Taylor swung her legs out of the bed, and she said, "You should go," waving her hand as if dismissing a maid. "We're busy." The coffee cup slipped from my hand and crashed onto the floor. The sound was the exact sound of my heart breaking. I left the apartment without another word, not because I wanted to leave, but because if I stayed, I would have screamed, and crying in front of Ethan was the last thing I would give him. I walked to my parents' house, tears streaming, breath shaking, every memory stabbing me harder than the last. I needed my mother. I needed someone to tell me this wasn't real. But when I arrived, standing at the doorway with red eyes and trembling hands, they didn't open their arms. They opened fire. My mother's eyes were cold. My father's disappointment was louder than his words. "After everything we sacrificed, you let that boy humiliate our family." "It's your fault," my mother added. "We warned you. You chose him over us." And then came the sentence I will never forget. "You are no longer welcome in this house." There are pains that echo for minutes, and then there are pains that scar your soul forever. I walked away again, twice abandoned within 1 hour. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who I was anymore. By sunset, I found myself at the bus station with a small backpack, numb and empty. I didn't care where the bus was heading. Anywhere was better than the pieces of my life scattered behind me. When I boarded the bus, I sat by the window and watched the town that had both raised me and crushed me fade into the background. The buildings turned into silhouettes, the streets into shadows. It felt like watching my old self die. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the exhaustion and heartbreak, a new feeling began to spark. Not hope, not strength. Something darker, sharper, alive. I whispered to myself, not knowing these words would shape the next years of my life. They took everything from me. One day, I'll take back everything. The bus rumbled forward, the night grew dark, and I, Maya Brooks, the girl who was used, discarded, and blamed, began her transformation, not into the victim they expected, but into the storm they never saw coming. My revenge didn't start with a plane. It started with pain. Raw, burning, unforgettable. Pain powerful enough to rebuild a destiny. And destiny was listening. This was the day I learned the truth. Love breaks you. Betrayal shapes you. Revenge builds you. And I was ready to be built. The bus carried me through the night like a drifting soul. I didn't know where I was heading, and for the first time in my life, I didn't care. The window beside me was cold, and my breath fogged the glass each time I exhaled. I watched cities pass like fading dreams, small towns swallowed by darkness, and silhouettes of strangers climbing on and off. I wasn't Maya Brooks anymore. I was just a girl with no home. By the time the bus stopped in Nashville, the sky was turning purple, and my heart felt like a stone someone had carved into my chest. The city woke around me with noise, life, and a kind of energy I hadn't felt in years. People rushed past with coffees and briefcases and futures. They had direction. I had nothing. Not even my name felt like it belonged to me anymore. My wallet held $240. My phone battery was at 7%. My soul felt like it had been chewed up and spat out. I found a cheap motel near the edge of downtown. The sign blinked in broken red neon, "Sleep easy." The irony almost made me laugh. The room smelled like cigarettes and old carpet. The bed creaked, the curtains were thin, and the bathroom light flickered every time I breathed near it. But it was shelter, a door I could close, a space that Ethan's lies couldn't invade. I sat on the bed and stared at my hands. They looked unfamiliar, too still, too empty. I used to have a family. I used to have a plan. I used to have love. Now, I had silence, and silence can be louder than screams. My phone buzzed. One message. From my mother. "Do not come back. You made your choice." A second one followed, from a cousin. "Everyone knows what Ethan did. People are talking. Stay away for a while." A third, from Ethan. I didn't want to open it, but pain is a strange thing. It makes you curious about the very thing that broke you. His message was short. "You'll get over this. Don't make a scene." A scene? That man took 2 years of my life and burned it to ashes. A scene was the least he deserved. I blocked his number, and for the first time since leaving town, I allowed myself to cry. Not quiet tears, but deep, shaking sobs that tore through my chest like glass. I cried for the girl I used to be, for the family I lost, for the love that wasn't love at all. I cried until the tears ran dry. Then I stared at the cracked ceiling and whispered, "I will never be this version of me again." That promise didn't light a fire. Not yet. It simply drew a line. The next morning, I forced myself out of bed and began looking for work. I walked the streets with my backpack, applying to diners, clothing shops, and cafes. My voice trembled at first, but after the 10th place, the shaking stopped. Rejection became normal. People didn't care about my heartbreak. They cared about my experience, my confidence, my attitude. And I was building those from ashes. After hours of searching, I found a small coffee shop called Silver Moon. It was run by a middle-aged woman named Olivia West. She had sharp eyes, a soft voice, and the kind of presence that made you feel seen but not judged. She asked me to sit. She asked me why I moved to Nashville. I hesitated, but something about her kindness broke through my last wall. I needed to leave everything behind, I said quietly. She nodded slowly, as if she understood exactly what I meant without needing details. Everyone deserves a fresh start, she said. Can you start tomorrow morning? My throat tightened. I nodded. It wasn't a glamorous job. I wore an apron that smelled like roasted beans. I learned how to use the espresso machine. I swept floors and wiped tables and watched strangers smile at each other with the type of love I once thought I had. But the job gave me something priceless: routine, purpose, and a new beginning. Over the next weeks, life settled into a quiet pattern. I worked morning shifts, took evening walks through the city, and returned to my motel each night. I avoided anything that reminded me of Ethan. I avoided my hometown. I avoided the broken version of myself. But trauma has a way of snaking into the quiet moments. Every time I saw a couple holding hands, something twisted inside me. Every time I heard someone say, "I love you," my chest tightened. And sometimes in the late hours, I woke up thinking I heard my mother calling my name, before remembering she didn't want me anymore. It was during one of those nights, around 2 a.m., that something changed. I was sitting on the motel floor, leaning against the bed, staring at the moon through the cheap curtains, and a thought came to me, slow and dangerous. What if this wasn't the end? What if this was the beginning? Ethan didn't just leave me. He humiliated me. He used me. He broke me so thoroughly that even my family blamed me. And men like Ethan, men who live off lies, they never stop. They just move to their next victim. Suddenly, the idea of staying silent felt like letting him win. I didn't want him back. I didn't want his apology. I wanted something deeper. I wanted my power back, my voice, my strength, my life. And maybe, one day, I wanted Ethan to know what it felt like to lose everything he counted on. Not because I wanted him destroyed, but because I wanted him to understand the cost of breaking someone who loved him. I stood up. I looked at myself in the cracked mirror. I didn't see the broken girl anymore. I saw a survivor, a fighter, a woman being reborn from fire. I whispered to my reflection, one day, he will regret everything. It wasn't rage. It wasn't hatred. It was certainty. Because there is something powerful about a woman who has nothing left to lose. She becomes someone impossible to predict, impossible to break, impossible to stop. This was the beginning of her rise, and the beginning of his fall. Ethan's message sat on my screen like poison. We need to talk. Just 6 words, but they hit me harder than the moment he told me he never planned to marry me. My first instinct was fear. The old version of me, the one he shaped and controlled, trembled inside my chest. But the newer version of me, the one born from ashes, the one Nashville was slowly rebuilding, she felt something else. Anger. Cold. Sharp. Clear. I stared at the message for almost a minute, waiting for it to make sense. Why now? Why reach out? Why pretend he cared? Ethan Carter never felt guilt. He felt inconvenience. My phone buzzed. A second message. I'm in Nashville for work. I heard you're here too. Of course he was. Men like him moved on, traveled, charmed, lied, repeated. And now his orbit was circling dangerously close to mine. I locked my phone and threw it onto the bed. My heart pounded and my hands shook, not because I wanted him back, not because his attention mattered. It shook because for the first time, I knew I had power he didn't expect.
The girl he left behind, she died the day I stepped onto that bus. He just didn't know it yet. I needed air, so I grabbed my jacket and left the motel. The night was cooler than usual, brushing against my skin like a warning. The city lights felt brighter, the streets louder, the people blurrier. My brain was a storm. Why was he contacting me after months? Did he regret it? Did he need something? Or was he about to ruin someone else's life the way he ruined mine? My walk turned into a run toward the river where I often met Jackson and Luna. They were sitting on the concrete ledge, guitar beside them, finishing off a late-night snack. Jackson noticed me first. His expression changed. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Worse," I breathed. "I saw Ethan." Luna spat out her drink dramatically. "Where?" "Not in person," I corrected. "He messaged me." Their reactions were instant. Jackson's jaw tightened. Luna's eyes darkened like storm clouds. "What did he say?" she asked. "That he wants to talk." "Talk? No, girl. Block him. Delete him. Throw your phone into the river and start a new life in the mountains." Jackson glared at her. "Not helpful." She rolled her eyes. "It's a little helpful." I sat between them, my hands buried in my hair. "I don't understand why he's reaching out. He left me. He destroyed me. He made me lose my family. Why now?" Jackson leaned forward. "Because guys like Ethan don't regret losing you. They regret losing control." "Control," I whispered. "Yes," Jackson said. "He controlled your emotions, your future, your family's opinion of you. You escaping that control, that scares him." Luna nodded fiercely. "You moved on. You rebuilt. You made friends. You created a life without him. Nothing pisses off a manipulative guy more than losing the girl he thought he owned." Owned. The word tasted bitter. But they were right. Before Nashville, I would have replied immediately. I would have cried. I would have begged for closure. I would have believed anything he said. But now, I was quiet, thinking, calculating. "What do you want to do?" Jackson asked gently. I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to ignore him. Part of me wants to scream at him. And part of me," I swallowed hard, "part of me wants him to see who I've become." Luna's eyes softened. "That part, that's the beginning of revenge." The wind blew across the river, rippling the water. I felt something deep in my chest shift, like the final piece of my old self loosening. I won't meet him. What I will do is understand why he's here. Jackson nodded. "Smart." Luna clapped. "Okay, Detective Maya, Operation Let's Ruin Ethan Carter is officially in motion." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time since seeing his message. But behind the humor, a truth was taking shape. I wasn't going to run from him. I wasn't going to let him control the narrative. This time, I was going to watch him, study him, learn his weaknesses the way he once learned mine. When I returned to the motel, the fear was gone, replaced by something steady and powerful. I picked up my phone, opened his message, and typed, "Why?" Not "where are you?" Not "what do you want?" Just one word. One blade. His reply came instantly. "I wish we could talk in person. Please." Please? Ethan never said please. Before I could respond, another message followed. "I'm staying at the Marriott on Hayes Street, room 1218. My stomach dropped. Why did he think I would go to him? Why did he assume he still held that kind of power? Because the Ethan I knew would have assumed exactly that. I put the phone down. No reply. No explanation. Silence was its own message. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, not with sorrow, but with strategy. If Ethan was in Nashville, then fate had delivered him into my arena, not the other way. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't an accident. It was an opportunity. And opportunities, once lost, never return. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "You wanted to talk, Ethan? Now you will. But on my terms." As sleep pulled me under, a final realization hit me like lightning. The day I left home was the day he ended my life. This would be the day I started rewriting his. The revenge, quiet, slow, calculated, had finally begun.
The sun dipped behind the mountains as Evelyn and Luca pulled up to the safe house, a rundown cabin that looked abandoned from the outside but was wired with advanced surveillance inside. Evelyn stepped out of the car, her legs shaky, not from fear but from the earthquake that Aiden Graves' name still caused inside her. She had spent years trying to silence the memories, but now they returned with venom. The boy she had loved, the man who had used her like a disposable tool, the reason her family died believing she had brought shame to them. Luca placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this tonight." Evelyn shook her head. "I've already lost everything. The only thing left is the truth." Inside, Luca booted up his system, a custom-built computer with an encrypted network. Evelyn watched lines of code flicker on the screen as he traced the mysterious voicemail again. There was no doubt. The voice was Aiden's, disguised but still unmistakable. Even his silence carried arrogance. Why now? Why reach out after all these years? Luca leaned back in his chair, thinking. Maybe he realized you're not as gone as he thought. Maybe someone told him you survived. Or, she said bitterly, maybe he just wants to finish what he started. The idea made Luca tense. He doesn't get to decide that anymore. Evelyn paced the room, her mind spinning. She remembered Aiden at 17, charming, brilliant, and confident in the way only rich boys raised to rule could be. He made her feel seen in a world that constantly erased her. He promised to love her, promised to help her, promised he would marry her one day. Every promise came with a knife she didn't see until too late. Her family lost their business, their reputation, their peace. And Aiden walked away untouched. She clenched her fist so tightly her nails dug into her palms. "I won't let him win again," she said. Luca turned to her. "Then we take control. We choose the battlefield. We make the first move." Evelyn met his eyes. "You're not scared?" "I'm terrified," he said honestly, "but not of him. I'm scared of what you'll become if you don't finish this." Evelyn exhaled shakily. She knew what he meant. She'd been living half dead for years, a ghost carrying guilt she never deserved. But now that she knew Aiden was alive, active, and still pulling strings, something inside her reawakened. Not the old Evelyn, not the girl desperate for love, not the woman hoping for closure. This version of her had claws. She stared at the burner phone where the voicemail still sat like a trap waiting to be opened. This ends with him losing everything he stole. His empire, his name, his power. "And after that?" Luca asked. Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper, dark enough to chill the room. "After that, he loses himself." Rain crashed against the cabin windows like 1,000 tapping fingers, each drop echoing Evelyn's heartbeat. She sat alone in the dimly lit living room, replaying the same voicemail again and again. The distorted voice sounded mechanical, altered, but the final breath at the end, the faint, familiar exhale, was real. Too real. It struck her the same way betrayal had years ago. Sharp, unforgettable, and deeply personal. "It's him," she whispered. "Aiden Graves. The one person she never wanted to hear from again. The one person who had already destroyed everything she loved. Luca entered the room, wiping motor oil off his hands after tuning the getaway car. "You're sure? We can run another analysis." She shook her head. "You can't fake a breath pattern, Luca. He's playing games." Luca's expression tightened. "Then he wants something." "He wants control," she said. "He always did." The room fell silent, except for the storm outside. Evelyn pushed off the couch and began pacing. She felt like prey in a forest she used to know well, but now the trees had teeth. "What does he gain by reaching out?" Luca asked. Evelyn laughed bitterly. "Power, fear, the satisfaction of knowing he still gets under my skin." "But you're not that girl anymore," Luca said quietly. She stopped pacing, staring out the window. The darkness felt alive, pulsing with the same energy she felt inside. "No," she said. "I'm not." She grabbed her coat from the chair, slipping the burner phone into her pocket. "I'm done letting him pull strings from the shadows." Luca frowned. "Where are you going?" "To remind him he's not the only monster he made." Before he could protest, she stepped outside into the rain. The storm drenched her instantly, but she welcomed it. It washed away the old version of her, the girl who begged Aiden to stay, the woman who believed his love could save her family, the fool who didn't know he was planting the seeds of their ruin behind her back. She looked up at the sky as thunder roared. "He thinks he's drawing me out," she whispered to the storm. "He doesn't know I've been waiting." Lightning lit the sky, revealing the outlines of mountains and trees. The world felt raw, violent, honest. Back inside, Luca watched her from the doorway. "He expects you to run." Evelyn turned to him, soaked, trembling with purpose. "Then let's do the opposite." "And what's that?" "We hunt." Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to reclaim. Evelyn stepped back inside, dripping water onto the wooden floor. Luca held her gaze, seeing the shift in her eyes, the same softness gone, replaced with resolve carved from pain. He nodded slowly. "Then tell me what you need." She met his stare, lightning flashing behind her like a crown. "A war." And in that moment, Evelyn wasn't just surviving Aiden's return. She was becoming the nightmare he never saw coming. By sunrise, Evelyn had made the decision that most people only think about in their darkest moments. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to hide. And she definitely wasn't going to wait for Aiden to strike first. She was going to erase herself. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, legally. Inside Luca's workshop, an underground bunker hidden beneath the cabin, computers hummed like an army preparing for war. Monitors displayed firewalls, code, and stolen access to county databases. Evelyn stood at the center, arms folded tightly across her chest, watching as Luca typed with impossible speed. "Are you sure about this?" Luca asked without looking up. The screens reflected in his eyes like blue flames. "Yes," she said firmly. "Evelyn Hart died years ago. I'm just making it official." Luca exhaled, a little frustrated, a little impressed. "Once this goes through, there's no going back. You'll have no birth certificate, no medical records, no school history, nothing." "Good." Her voice didn't waver. "Then he can't use my past as a weapon anymore." Luca clicked one final key. "Okay, it's done." A new window appeared. Death certificate, Evelyn Hart. Cause of death, vehicle fire. Body unidentifiable. She stared at the screen, feeling the strangest mix of emptiness and freedom. It was like burying the last piece of innocence she had left. "How does it feel?" Luca asked gently. Evelyn took a slow breath. "Like stepping out of a prison I didn't know I was still in." But the truth was more complicated. Seeing her own obituary online, her picture, her name, the life she struggled through, it felt like killing a ghost that had haunted her for too long. Luca leaned against the desk. "If Evelyn Hart is dead,
Who are you now? She didn't hesitate. A woman who's going to burn Aiden Graves' empire to the ground. Luca chuckled under his breath. You know, most people just change their hair color when they're upset. I'm not most people, she said. He nodded. That's why he'll never see you coming. Evelyn stepped closer to the main screen, displaying Aiden's name and files. He still thinks I'm the same girl he lied to, manipulated, and used to destroy my family. Her jaw tightened. He has no idea what he created. Luca studied her face, her calm fury, her controlled grief. So, what's the plan? Evelyn turned away from the screen, her eyes colder than the steel tables around her. Now that I'm dead, I can attack without him tracing anything back to me. And the first move? We expose the cracks in his world, find the weakest points in his business, his alliances, his reputation. We turn his power against him. Luca smiled like he had been waiting to hear those words. Then let's resurrect the woman he should have feared. Evelyn grabbed the laptop, shutting it with a finality that echoed through the bunker. No more hiding, she whispered. He started this. Her eyes hardened. And now, I finish it. Evelyn ran until the mansion lights vanished behind the trees, until her lungs burned and the cold air sliced her throat. But she didn't stop. Not until she reached the back road where Luca waited in the car, engine running, eyes sharp. She threw the door open and collapsed inside. You got it? He asked. She held up the stolen files with shaking hands. Everything. He documented every lie, every deal, every step he took to destroy my family. Luca pulled onto the road, tires kicking gravel. Then we finally have leverage. But Evelyn stared out the window, her mind stuck on the moment she saw Aiden again. The same face she once trusted, the same voice that once whispered promises in the dark, the same man who now stood before her without an ounce of regret. He didn't even hesitate, she said quietly. He admitted using me like it was strategy, not betrayal. Luca tightened his grip on the wheel. People like Aiden don't see betrayal the way we do. They see it as business. Business, she echoed bitterly. He calls destroying my family business? The car fell into silence. When they reached the cabin, Evelyn put the files on the table like they were radioactive. Everything she believed her family lost on accident. No, it was engineered by him. A teenager with a brilliant brain and no conscience. A boy who grew into a man who believed he was untouchable. Evelyn sank into a chair. I used to think he loved me. Lucas sat across from her. What he feels isn't love. It's ownership. She looked up sharply. That's worse. Yes, Lucas said softly. Because people like Aiden don't let go of what they think they own. Her heart tightened. He told me tonight that he decides how this story ends. Lucas scoffed. Of course he thinks that. He's lived his whole life playing God. Evelyn thought of Aiden's father, the powerful tycoon who raised him with money, ruthlessness, and a belief that Gravesmen never lose. Aiden doesn't just want power, Evelyn whispered. He wants domination. Luca nodded. Good thing we're about to ruin him. But Evelyn's mind wasn't on revenge alone. Something else disturbed her. The way Aiden didn't react when he saw her alive. No shock, no panic, just that entertained smirk. He knew, she said suddenly. Knew what? That I didn't die. Someone told him. Someone close. Luca frowned. You think he has someone watching you? I think he has someone watching both of us. The realization sent a chill through her. Aiden didn't believe she was dead because the death certificate said so. He believed what someone reported. Someone in her circle. "Who do we trust?" she asked. "Right now," Luca said, "no one, but each other." Evelyn picked up one of the files, flipping through her father's ruined contracts. Her vision blurred with rage. "I thinks he manipulate me again," she whispered. "But he's forgetting one thing." "What's that?" Luca asked. She lifted her gaze, eyes blazing. "I'm not the girl he broke. I'm the woman who survived." She stood, her voice steady. "He played God." Her jaw hardened. "Now he meets the consequences."
Aiden Graves' mansion rose above the hills like a fortress built on other people's ruins. Evelyn stood hidden among the trees across the property, her breath misting in the cold night air as she studied the place she once entered with hope and left in pieces. Back then, she had believed the mansion symbolized safety, privilege, love. Now she saw it for what it truly was: a palace of manipulation, a shrine to a man who never felt guilt. Luca crouched beside her, adjusting the thermal scanner. 4 guards on the ground floor, 2 on patrol, security cameras every 20 yards. He's tightened things since last time. "Because he's scared," Evelyn said. "Good." "You sure you want to do this tonight?" Luca asked. Evelyn's eyes stayed locked on the mansion's massive glass windows. "He sent that voicemail because he thinks he still controls me." She rose to her feet. "It's time to break that illusion." They moved quickly. Luca disabled the backyard cameras with a device he built himself, a compact pulse jammer disguised as a wristwatch. As soon as the feed glitched, Evelyn slipped through the gate, her body moving with a confidence she didn't have years ago. She was a shadow, quiet and intentional. Inside, the mansion felt like stepping into a memory she wished she could burn. The scent of expensive candles, the marble floors, the walls decorated with art he never appreciated. Everything exactly the same. Except her. Evelyn navigated the hallways until she reached Aiden's office. Her pulse raced, but her hands stayed steady. She found the hidden drawer Luca told her about behind a panel beneath the desk. It clicked open. Inside were files stamped with the Graves family crest. Her family's business, her father's patents, her mother's savings, her name. All documented, all calculated, all stolen. Each page was proof that Aiden hadn't just manipulated her emotionally, he had strategically used her as the weak point in her own family's downfall. The anger hit her like a physical force. She gripped the stack of papers, her nails digging into the glossy covers. "How could I have loved you?" she whispered. Footsteps. Soft. Confident. Not Luca's. Evelyn turned and froze. Aiden stood in the doorway. Aiden Graves' mansion rose above the hills like a fortress built on other people's ruins. Evelyn stood hidden among the trees across the property, her breath misting in the cold night air as she studied the place she once entered with hope and left in pieces. Back then, she had believed the mansion symbolized safety, privilege, love. Now she saw it for what it truly was: a palace of manipulation, a shrine to a man who never felt guilt. Luca crouched beside her, adjusting the thermal scanner. 4 guards on the ground floor, 2 on patrol, security cameras every 20 yards. He's tightened things since last time. "Because he's scared," Evelyn said. "Good." "You sure you want to do this tonight?" Luca asked. Evelyn's eyes stayed locked on the mansion's massive glass windows. "He sent that voicemail because he thinks he still controls me." She rose to her feet. It's time to break that illusion. They moved quickly. Luca disabled the backyard cameras with a device he built himself, a compact pulse jammer disguised as a wristwatch. As soon as the feed glitched, Evelyn slipped through the gate, her body moving with a confidence she didn't have years ago. She was a shadow, quiet and intentional. Inside, the mansion felt like stepping into a memory she wished she could burn. The scent of expensive candles, the marble floors, the walls decorated with art he never appreciated. Everything exactly the same. Except her. Evelyn navigated the hallways until she reached Aiden's office. Her pulse raced, but her hands stayed steady. She found the hidden drawer Luca told her about behind a panel beneath the desk. It clicked open. Inside were files stamped with the Graves family crest. Her family's business, her father's patents, her mother's savings, her name. All documented, all calculated, all stolen. Each page was proof that Aiden hadn't just manipulated her emotionally, he had strategically used her as the weak point in her own family's downfall. The anger hit her like a physical force. She gripped the stack of papers, her nails digging into the glossy covers. "How could I have loved you?" she whispered. Footsteps. Soft. Confident. Not Luca's. Evelyn turned and froze. Aiden stood in the doorway.